Today's video is brought to you by Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout has helped over 100,000 people start their own podcast. It's the easiest way to host, promote, and track your podcast. Start your free 90-day trial today at buzzsprout.com. Are you a podcaster still struggling with the idea of what it takes to become a great podcast host, a great communicator? Well, this video is exactly for you.
Podcasting, training and development.
Hey there, podcaster. My name is the Shannon, radio broadcaster, podcaster, and podcast producer, and of course, the host of the podcast called The Podcast Therapist, available wherever you get your podcast. If you don't know where to get that, there's a link for the podcast down in the description of this particular video, and I highly encourage that you listen to it because it is going to help you with your podcasting journey. And especially today's video episode, it's actually taken from the episode that I released yesterday as of this recording with my friend Mac Watson. Mac Watson is a radio broadcaster who did radio here in the Phoenix, Arizona area, and now has his own podcast. And I wanted to invite Mac onto my podcast and share this particular clip with you because I think it's important for you as a podcaster to really not get so wound up in the idea of becoming immediately great as a podcast host. We see all kinds of podcasters that are out there in the marketplace, and they all have their own specific style. But the way that Mac and I have learned how to present in front of a microphone comes from the radio industry, comes from the radio realm. And instead of having me share with you all of my experiences in radio, I figured it would be a really good idea to bring Mac in and have him share his own perspective on what it takes to become a great communicator with your podcast audience. He uses a lot of what his radio experience is and puts it into his podcast. So he's going to be sharing some tips and things that he has gathered over the years when it comes to radio broadcasting and parlaying it into podcasting. So I hope you enjoy this clip. So you came from the music side before you got into radio. You were in music. You're like me. I'm in music right now, but you were in music before you went to talk radio. And how did you learn that those communication skills and that style for yourself? Are there any specific things that you did, or are there tips that you can share with this audience to help them grow that confidence in communication?
Yeah, way back when, I used to talk to this program director, a guy who ran the radio station at a very successful station, and he said, when you crack the mic, when you open the mic, have something to say. And there's this mantra, especially in top 40 or CHR radio, which is light, bright, and tight, or light, bright, and out of sight. You know, you've got to make sure it's condensed. You've got to make sure it's concise, and you've got to make sure you have a point. I also learned, being an English major, that everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Right.
It doesn't matter whether it's a conversation on your smartphone, whether it's a movie, whether it's a book, whether it's a joke. Everything has to have a beginning, and then a middle, and then an end. So tell me what you're going to tell me. That's the beginning. Tell me, which is the middle, and the end is tell me what you told me and be effective. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I can break it down into very, very simplistic points, but it's also hours in the chair. It's that Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours theory. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 10,000 hours of doing something right. Like, I couldn't have done a talk show until I was like in my 30s, because I needed that 8 to 10 years of doing music radio to learn how to sell something. And when I say sell something, learn how to do a break, learn how to turn on the microphone and actually say something of value in 10 seconds or less, because I used to do top 40 radio, and you don't have a lot of time. You've got to be concise. And some of the best communicators have come from the top 40 era, or the top 40 world, that are now doing talk radio, because they understand that you have to sustain your message and sustain the audience. And in order to do that, you have to be effective. And again, I can tell you that there are different ways of doing that. And there, you know, Rush Limbaugh does it one way, Glenn Beck does it another way, Sean Hannity does it another way. But they all know the one thing: how to connect with your listener and how to tell them. And don't get me wrong, you don't have to agree or like them. You don't have to like their show or their style, but they know how to communicate effectively enough that they are, the top tiers of talk radio, where I was just, I was just on the surface of talk radio with
Right.
my show because I'm in a local market. And in Phoenix, Phoenix is a different market than Detroit. It's a different market than Albuquerque. It's a different market than LA. You've got to
Right.
learn who your audience is. And if you can learn who your audience is and talk to them, not at them, I think people will respond to that.
That is huge, to say that you have to talk to them. It's almost as though you have to become their friend in order for them to
Well,
really
yeah,
buy into
yeah.
what you're talking about.
Right. And it's not only that, it's the sense that you can talk to somebody about something for an extended period of time. Like I said, it's narrowcasting.
Mhm.
So, I don't know about you, but I knew a guy in college that as soon as you brought up, classic cars, the guy would talk your ear off, but
Right.
try to have a conversation about anything else, and he was stuttering and stammering and, doing whatever.
Right.
But if you talk to him about muscle cars and classic cars, the GTOs and the Camaros and the Mustangs, he knew every spec, he knew every kind of, transmission, he knew everything. Well, that's the way you have to be with certain things in order to get it across. You have to be
Right.
a master communicator. You have to know something about something to tell people, and that's what it basically is. So if you're going to do a show about gardening, well, you better know about gardening, and you better be interesting enough to share with people tips and stuff that to become a master gardener. I'm not
Right.
saying you have to have the best. That's the other thing too. It's a podcast.
Right.
You don't have to, you don't have to be a horticultural expert. You don't have to be a botanist. You don't have to be, some bigwig that owns their own nursery.
Mhm.
Just grow tomatoes and share the experience with people. And it's the way you share the experience that will capture people and make sure that they come back for more and listen to you. And that's
That's
what it is.
yeah. That's what I think is huge, and that's where I think a lot of people get hung up, is that they say, "I don't know what type of content that I need to create. What do I even create?" And what you're telling me is that when you hear the experience of one person, you're only hearing the experience of one person, but you might be that one person
Right.
lights the fire under someone else who could be listening. Am I
Right.
correct? Right?
Yeah,
So
that it's the one person that their perspective, and again, we all have perspectives, but it's a way that we tell everybody. It's
right.
a way that we communicate. And the way I communicate is through language, and that my voice is an instrument. I come at it from a very different point of view, say, than a sportscaster or
Right.
a news person. So what I'm talking about is I'm talking about effectively communicating with other people. And it's kind of tough, but again, a guy long time ago, another program director told me, remember that you're talking to one person. You're not talking to an
Right.
audience. That's television.
Right.
Television is where you talk to an audience. Radio is you talk to one person, one on one. So if you can imagine, or even some people have done this, I've seen it in the studio. They'll take an actual picture of
Yeah.
somebody and put it in the studio and talk to that person. That's the secret to good communication, knowing that you're talking to one person about how you feel about something, whatever it is.
And there's this I noticed this in my time of doing radio at night, and where I came became unstuck in that process of saying, like, oh my gosh, I'm talking to an audience versus talking to one person. It was about 6 years into my career. I had just gotten full time, and one day I was just kind of like, you know what do I have to lose if I'm just
Yeah,
talking to one person? Like, what do I have to lose? It just feels like I'm talking to one person. So that's when I started incorporating a lot of what I knew about my audience. So my
right.
audience, rock and roll people. So I started using words like bro and dude and things that really related to them, and tried to think as though I was standing at a concert with them and holding that conversation with them, saying, dude, did you see this? Did you see the Foo Fighters released a brand new song, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And
Yeah,
that's where a lot of things became unstuck for me. And so I noticed that my deliveries, they became a lot shorter, and I was more effective in the communication. Now, does it mean that I was perfect every time? No, I wasn't perfect every time, but I became better and better at that. And so I think, to what you were saying, is that the practice and being in the on the mic and practicing in front of the mic and getting that time in front of the mic really does come with just cutting your teeth on the mic. If you're just starting, or you're someone who maybe 2-3 years into this and you're still not comfortable, cutting your teeth on the mic is very important.
Yeah, but here's another trick, though.
I know I'm leaving you hanging, but I want you to go on over it, and I want you to listen to that podcast episode with Mac on The Podcast Therapist. You can see the link right there on your screen to go ahead and jump on over to my website and find out how you can subscribe and put this in one of your podcast players, or you could just listen directly on the site itself and catch that whole interview with Mac Watson. It's a really good interview. He shares so many valuable tips that, some of the things that I have forgotten over the years in radio. If you like this video interview, go ahead and leave it a thumbs up right here on YouTube. And of course, hit that subscribe button so that you can get notified when I drop a brand new video. And of course, there's a little bell notification. Like I always say, you hit that and that notifies you when I drop a brand new video. It's certainly going to keep you in the loop as to more of these types of interviews that I share out with you on this particular YouTube channel. So if you have a question, I want to encourage you to leave a question down in the section below on this YouTube channel. And I want you to let me know what you struggle with when it comes down to getting in front of the microphone and trying to communicate your ideas better and better with each podcast. Or maybe share some of the tips that you have learned along your journey that will help a podcaster who reads the comments on my YouTube channel. Again, thank you so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe, like I said, and I'll be seeing you next time.